Hi, book lovers. This is Jenny with Julia Baby Jen's Reading Room. This is Top 10 Tuesday, and it's Tuesday, April 9th. The theme this week is Top 10 Books, my top 10 books before I was a blogger. Not very many of these have really changed that much, but there's probably a few. Number 10 was Peachy Road by Anne River Siddons. This one probably isn't on there anymore. I love this book. It is about a boy named Shep who grows up in a very rich estate, and his cousin Lucy's and her mother come to live with their family because they need help. And so he and Lucy grow up together, and all kinds of things happen to him based on that. He always feels loyal to Lucy. She's not such a great person and not very good to him. So it's a really interesting book, and it's just kind of their life story. I mean, it goes through almost everything and it from his point of view. Number 9 is it's actually one of my favorite authors, Dean Koontz. Love all of his books, but I especially love his Odd Thomas series. This is the first book, Odd Thomas, and it's about a guy who has a ability to see dead people. He can't hear them, but he uses his ability to solve lots of murder cases and things like that, and he's almost always constantly in danger. My favorite is really the first book because it's a great love story between him and the girl that he wants to be with forever. So number 8 would be Wicked by Gregory Maguire. Love this book, love this series, also love the musical, but this is definitely the best in the series. And if you haven't heard, it's the story of the Wicked Witch of the West, behind the scenes, her life story, and things aren't really what you thought they were in Oz. So it's a really interesting story. The second book, Son of a Witch, is about her son after she's died, and that one was really good too. The third one was about the lion's point of view, and I didn't like it as much. The last one, Out of Oz, came out last year, and I haven't read it yet. It's a huge book, so I haven't gotten to it, but I can't wait to read it. But I love Wicked. This is a great book to read. It's very different than the musical, although the musical was really good. But this is a really interesting story if you like to read retellings of fairy tales and things like that. Number 7, I actually do not have a copy of it. I can't find my copy, and the library did not have a copy for me to show you. But my 7th favorite book, and it would probably still be in my top 10, is by Octavia Butler, Kindred. It's classified as a sci-fi story just because it involves time travel, but it's really not a sci-fi story. It's actually more about slavery and the injustices of it. What it is it's a modern day woman. I guess in the time period she would have been the 70s or 80s. She's young and she's black. She dates a white guy. And then suddenly, out of the blue, she starts traveling back in time. And she figures out that she's traveling back to one of her ancestors who was a rich southern plantation boy and grows up to be a plantation owner. And anytime that his life is in danger, she gets called back to save him, and she figures out that if she doesn't save him, then she will no longer exist because he's her ancestor and he's where her line started. But when she goes back there, she can't come back to our current time unless she's in danger. So the first few times she goes, she's in danger immediately and she comes right back. But then as things get going, she gets stuck there for long periods of time, and so she has to be a slave. So it's a really interesting story, and it's just really good. It puts slavery in a whole new way. Number 6 is Reading Lolita in Tehran. It's by Azar Nafisi. It's actually a memoir of hers, so it's based on a true story. It's a memoir, so yeah, it's not completely factual because it's her memories. But it goes back and forth in time. But it's basically about she's a very well educated university professor in Tehran, and she teaches literature. And then she actually goes to college in America and spends lots of time in the western part of the world. So she's pretty well versed in everything. And then most of the story is about what it's like after the revolution and when they no longer have any say and women don't have any say. And pretty soon she's kicked out of the college. There's no women teachers anymore, and women aren't allowed to study either. So she and some of her most promising students meet in secret to talk about some of Western literature. They talk about Lolita, obviously, as the title says. They also talk about Pride and Prejudice, a lot of Jane Austen books. They talk about The Great Gatsby. Oh, Henry James. I can't remember who else they talk about, but it's a really interesting book because it not only it talks a lot about the literature and their perspective of it, which is really interesting, but it talks a lot about Iran and what it's like there. So it's a really interesting book, and I absolutely loved it. Number 6 is probably on everybody's book list, Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. I actually have it on my Nook, so I no longer have my own copy, so I had to pick one up from the library to show you. What can I say? It's just a classic story, and I just loved it. I love all of Jane Austen's novels, but I really loved this one. And actually, not too long ago, I watched the movie, the 2005 version with Keira Knightley, and I never seen that version before, and I really loved it. I think I liked it better than the one with Colin Firth, and I really liked that one too. So, just such a classic romance story. I just love it. Number 5 is a children's book. This author is actually what made me start liking reading. When I was in 2nd grade, believe it or not, I hated reading and I was bad at it. I was at the bottom of the class, and it was a big, huge thing, and I had a really horrible teacher who did not encourage me at all. My mom finally did, and she went out and bought me the whole set of Laura Ingalls Wilder's books. This is my favorite of the set. This is the 4th one, On the Banks of Plum Creek. And I just liked it. It's just such interesting tales, and she lived in Iowa for a time, and lots of states that are right around the Midwest, so it was easy to connect with her in that way, and just to learn what it was like a long time ago for pioneers to settle America. It's just, and it's such a great story of family, and I just love these books. So this is my favorite of Laura Ingalls Wilder's. It was On the Banks of Plum Creek, and I've read it umpteen million times. I don't know how many times I've read it, a lot. Number 4 is also a children's book, but I don't consider it a children's book. My favorite Harry Potter book, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows by J.K. Rowling. Love Harry Potter. I'm a huge Harry Potter fan. I didn't get really into it until the 4th book was released, and my mom went out and bought me the set, and I fell in love with it. And then after that, every book that came out, I had to go to the release party at midnight, pick up my copy, and then I would go home, go to sleep, wake up the next day, and read straight through the book. No one was allowed to bug me. I don't even think I got up to go to the bathroom. I just read straight through. I love these books. But this one was definitely the best for me. I just really got, I think, what J.K. Rowling was trying to say through the books. And this one, I think I really understood. So, and I've reread it a lot of times, and I always get something different out of it every time. So it's just a great, great story. Number 3 is one of my favorite Oprah books. I read, I think, all of them. I might have missed a few, but I read quite a few. But this one is the Poisonwood Bible by Barbara Kingsolver. I wasn't expecting to like it as much as I did. It's about a Southern Baptist family. The minister and his family go as missionaries to Africa, to this tribal village to help out there in the Congo. This is back in the 50s, before the big war. So they're there during the war, and things go crazy, and it's just an amazing book. It really changes your views on so many different things, and it's life-changing for the family. Most of them never leave Africa. So it's an amazing story. It is a tearjerker at times, but it's just such a great, great story. I love it. Number 2 is a book I read in 8th grade, and it's my mom's favorite book, and she gave it to me for Christmas when I was in 8th grade, and I plowed through it and read it in less than 2 weeks, which she was amazed, but I love it, and I've reread it a million times. Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell. It was hilarious too, because we were studying the Civil War in 8th grade, and I aced every test because this has so much information on the Civil War. So it's a really great story. I reread it all the time, and I don't reread it front cover to back cover. I'll just open the book somewhere and start reading. It's that kind of a story for me. So, love this book. And number 1 is Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance by Robert M. Pirsig. This is not changed. It's still my favorite book. Read it when I was 18, right when I graduated high school, and I still love it. I don't reread it all the time, but I do reread it every couple of years just because it's one of those books that it's all about making you think. There's a story to it, but it's more about making you think, and so every time you read it, you get something different out of it based on where you are in your life. It's a nonfiction story, actually. It's about a man who's on a motorcycle trip with his 11-year-old son cross country and a couple of friends of theirs. He was a brilliant professor in Montana, and he's going back to visit his old stomping grounds. But the story is that he was obsessed with finding the secret of life, and he was very, very, very smart. And so he spent years trying to find the secret of life and what it all means in a logical way. And he eventually drove himself insane with it. He became crazy. And this is back in the 70s, 60s or 70s, so they gave him shock treatments for it. And eventually he had a new personality. So he remembers everything that time, his old self, but he thinks of it in his mind as a whole different person than who he is now. And so then he starts having lots of flashbacks and thinking on his trip because he's going back through his places he used to be. So it's really interesting. And then along the way, he talks about how you can compare the meaning of life and God to the art of maintaining your motorcycle. So it's just really interesting. I love how he puts it all together. I just love this book, and it's just one of those reads, and most people, you either love it or you hate it, and I loved it. So that is my top 10 this week. I will probably see you next week. I'll probably see you on Saturday in my mailbox if all goes well. We'll talk to you later. Thank you. Bye.